I have a feeling, very strong feeling, that music of, well, what we call today, but that includes music which was written a century ago, but that has its beauty, and I would like to convince to a broader audience that this music has beauty and has a lot of connections with contemporary daily life. And that's very interesting. I do feel that many people could connect to this music as long as they open themselves up for it. Yesterday I've been giving the concert in the Kleine Zaal in Concertgebouw in Amsterdam. I do think you need the whole classical repertoire as a basis for your contemporary stuff, and it can only reinforce each other for your touch, for your sense of form, structure, everything, all the traditional aspects, they need to be there in contemporary music as much as in classical music. I was very happy to play the John Adams piece yesterday, also a little bit as a tryout, because I will record those pieces for the Naxos, the record label. I will play 4 pieces in total, which is the big piece Phrygian Gates that I played yesterday, and also American Berserk, which I also played yesterday. And then there's a very short piece, 5-minute piece, called China Gates. And then a larger work, very recent work as well, but then for 2 pianos, Hallelujah Junction it's called.
Piano works that you're recording.
Yes.
How do they differ? How do they progress?
Yes.
How does Adams grow up?
Well, that's it. Well, that's nice. The first piece, actually I won't record it in chronological order, but China Gates is a small piece I told about. It's 5 minutes only. And that was a kind of pre-study for this larger Phrygian Gates. And China Gates makes use of the same patterns. It starts like that. But whereas Phrygian Gates moves all the time, this is just a short work which only focuses on this particular texture. So on the texture of one low voice, which has a very slow harmonic rhythm, and then a fast pulse and something changing in between. Something I really like about contemporary music in comparison to classical music. Of course you can relate to contemporary life, but there are simply things that you cannot, that you do not hear back in classical music. The pulse of daily life, of being in a fast train, for example, that's something you won't hear back, you cannot hear back in any classical piece. With the John Adams piece, for example, there's no melody and also no traditional sense of legato or phrasing. It's very contemporary in that sense. Pieces like Phrygian Gates, the way of expression is very different than anything written before. And at first it might seem that this music is less expressive because there's hardly any rubato, so that means that you don't play very freely in this music. It's all written very exactly. You have to keep the same tempo, the same pulse, and there's no outbursts, let's say, of emotion. It's all quite static. This has not, we call that exploded, but imploded. This music has a very, to me, dramatic and very scary energy almost, but within the very confined structure and confined notes, the limited use of scales. The other is, for example, he writes on one note only left pedal, which makes it softer and changes the color. This is a normal tone, and when you put left pedal, you get this sound. So, for example, these notes remain very clear, quite sharp, but then this one, the low notes, gets a very different sound color, because just for that note I quickly use that pedal. And he even used... There's a big gap almost between classical music, or there seems to be a big gap between classical music and contemporary music. And to me, the more I studied contemporary music, and of course classical music, but the more I discovered that those two are basically the same. They are an extension of each other, that's the only thing, but it's not two worlds. And I think when you listen to it, you should forget all about, let's say, the traditional ways of listening to music, and you shouldn't listen for the great emotional gestures. You should all find it in much more introvert and little, small gestures. And every composer wants to express the same, and it's always, actually always about emotions. And I think Charles Ives, for example, wanted to say exactly the same as Beethoven, but just in another language. But all the music is the same. For me, it's very interesting because those four pieces are extremely different. And that's again one of the nice things and surprising things of contemporary music. This is only one composer, and you think, oh, well, a whole CD of this kind of style, maybe that's a bit too much, but it isn't, because every piece is completely different, even though you will recognize, hey, that's John Adams in the harmony, but it's so differentiated and varied, and so it gives a broad overview of, I think, even of music in general. I hope it will contribute to the piece, or the pieces becoming, more of a standard work. I mean, it's a big goal, but who knows?